the council. In the studio with me is
Sharon Onunjoku.
All right, on the show with us today, we have a very, very special guest with us on the show today. He is Mr. Mike Igbokwe, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Yes, he is the vice president, Nigerian Maritime Law Association. He is a holder of a postgraduate diploma in maritime law with distinction, I must mention, and a master's in maritime and commercial law. He is conferred with the rank of senior advocate of Nigeria in 2004. Right. So his key law practice areas are dispute resolution, maritime restructuring and insolvency, aviation, and debt recovery. Mr. Igbokwe, SAN, is a major contributor to both the Nigerian shipping industry and international shipping sector. He has written the most comprehensive book on maritime cabotage law, which is titled Nigerian Maritime Cabotage Policy and Law, the Case and Advocacy, and he continues to publish and deliver papers on various aspects of maritime law, both locally and internationally. He is the immediate past African regional representative of the Maritime Committee of the Maritime and Transportation Law section of the International Bar Association. He is a fellow and council member of both the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators and Business Recovery and Insolvency Practitioners Association of Nigeria. He played an instrumental role in the review of the Cabotage Bill before it was passed into an act in 2003, and he drafted the Suppression of Piracy and Unlawful Acts and Other Related Offences Bill, which was enacted as the Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Offences Act of 2019. Furthermore, as counsel, he has been representing federal government agencies, port concessionaries, oil and gas companies, foreign and local ship owners, ship operators, and financial institutions and other corporate bodies on different matters in his key areas of practice. He is also an author of The Dynamism of Law Practice in Nigeria and the Trajectory of Excellence in Legal Practice, Insights from Legal Experts. You're most welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
For having me.
Okay. So, we have read that you were one of those who worked for Nigeria to have the Coastal and Inland Shipping, which is called the Cabotage Act in 2003, and that you wrote a book on cabotage. Could you please tell us about the origin of the cabotage and what maritime cabotage means?
Okay. The word cabotage actually is one that originated from Spanish language, which is a reference to navigation of ships from cape to cape along the coastline of a nation,
okay,
or a country's coastal waters. Okay, and in French, it's also referred to as cabota. All right, and what has actually changed in international law to a reference to transportation of passengers and cargo from point to point or from port to port on the coastline of the of a nation and also the waterways.
Okay.
All right. And but you've got different kinds of cabotage. You got road cabotage, you got air cabotage or air transportation cabotage, and you got maritime cabotage. What the Cabotage Act is concerned with is the one that is referred to as maritime cabotage, and that's the one that has to do with movement of goods and passengers from point to point or port to port on the coastline,
okay,
on the waterways, inland waterways of a nation. That's the one that Nigeria adopted through the Cabotage Act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you please tell us why did Nigeria decide to have the Maritime Cabotage Act?
Well, the reason is because at that point in time, it was actually discovered to be the best means of growing the local shipping industry. in 1999, President Olusegun Obasanjo became the president, and he was reluctant in financing or funding or getting the federal government to fund the acquisition of vessels by Nigerians. And his reason, which of course every patriotic Nigerian appreciated, was because when he was leaving office in 1979 as a military head of state, Nigeria under national shipping lines had about 26 ships. And by the time he came in as a civilian president in 1999, all those ships were gone. There was none left. The MV Abuja was already to be auctioned in some East Asian country as a result of indebtedness. So he just felt he was not going to commit federal funds to that.
Okay.
So, and then secondly, it was discovered that the National Shipping Policy Act of 1987, which was the then legislation, promoted and encouraged only deep sea shipping at the expense of inland and coastal shipping. Inland waterways and coastal shipping, in the sense that cargo support was there, cargo sharing was there for them, but nothing was done about the development of the coastal shipping. Okay?
Yeah.
So it was, and then what is more, Nigeria felt that if we had to go for a maritime cabotage policy, which was strict because we have two types of maritime cabotage policies. One is strict or strong cabotage policy. The other one is a relaxed or modified or liberal cabotage policy. Okay, and maybe I should explain this for you to properly understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, in the strict cabotage policy regime, the only vessels that are wholly owned, wholly manned by citizens of that nation and are built in that country can operate coastal shipping, that is, carriage of passengers and cargoes from point to point on its coastline and waterways, inland waterways.
Okay.
But in relaxed or liberal cabotage regime, you have a situation where these three elements will be relaxed. Again, because if they were strictly enforced, there is insufficient or absent local capacity to be able to meet those requirements. And it will more or less amount to the country shooting itself on the legs. And also, Nigeria relies heavily on the oil and gas sector as a revenue-generating sector. And you know that a lot of the vessels that we got in Nigeria operate in that sector. So many of them are built abroad. Many of them are owned by foreigners. They're technically manned by foreigners. So if Nigeria decided to have a strict cabotage policy, which would be a way of saying only vessels that are owned and built by Nigerians or in Nigeria and crewed by Nigerians would be taking care of the oil and gas sector. That will create a lot of problems, and it will affect our foreign reserves. It will affect the ability of Nigerians to be able to ship Nigerian crude oil, and it will create a lot of problems. So there was a means that was devised, which is called ministerial waiver, whereby one of these any of these conditions where there is absence of that capacity locally could be waived by the minister on an application by someone who wants that to be waived. And if that is done, then a foreign vessel or foreign-owned vessel or foreign crew vessel will be permitted to take part in cabotage trade.
Okay. My understanding of the cabotage regime currently operational, the relaxed one, is that the objective is to promote indigenous participation.
Great.
Okay, and then now we have a situation where there is that window for foreign participation where the minister has to, grant waivers. The granting of that waiver, does it not create a situation where the major objective, which is to promote indigenous participation, now becomes weakened, or like the idea is completely taken away? That idea of local indigenous participation.
I see what you mean. All right, yeah, you're quite right. I must say here that those of us who are campaigning for this cabotage law
Yes.
to be put in place, and who actually encourage waivers, bore that in mind. But the whole arrangement was such that waivers were not supposed to be permanent.
Okay.
The law actually makes waivers to operate for 1 year. They're renewable and revocable by the minister on certain conditions. Okay. Yeah. And there is a provision in the Act that says that after 5 years, the National Assembly will be entitled to review the provisions of the waiver. Again, because one did not want a situation where waiver will become a permanent feature, and just like you rightly pointed out, and people will just, or foreigners or foreign built vessels will just be coming for waivers and will not make further arrangement to ensure that they met the requirements of the law. Unfortunately, that appears to be the situation we have found ourselves in right now. So, but that was not the legislative intention.
Okay.
That was not the intention of even the sponsors of the bill or the stakeholders who campaigned. And I mean, in those days, it was a big fight because you had different interests. Those who wanted the status quo to remain, and those who wanted changes, and who wanted an advancement in the local shipping industry, and so on and so forth. It was a big challenge. But the thing is, when you got a good law, you've also got to implement to the letter and monitor the implementation of that law.
Absolutely.
With a view to seeing, where you got to streamline or perhaps block loopholes or make amendments. No law is ever 100% perfect.
Yes.
Okay? So, but I mean, we've been operating this for 18 years, and I believe the implementers and the legislators would know from enforcing the provisions of the Act what the weaknesses are and which areas would need to be amended with a view to actually, enhancing or perhaps achieving the expected benefits. Because unless you have this implementation and is efficient, effective, we will not get the benefits expected to be realized from the implementation of the Cabotage Act and the regulations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. From all you've explained, the reason for this waiver is to, fill in the gaps.
Correct.
That lack of capacity has created.
Yeah.
Okay, but we know that if we don't do anything about it, it will continue. It will just keep on, and then we don't get to achieve that goal, the objective of that indigenous participation. So what are these challenges, like the factors that are militating against indigenous participation, and how can they be resolved?
Okay, numerous. I mean, I really feel sad, as one of those who fought so hard. Like you mentioned, I wrote a book on it, compilation of all my papers on it, with a view to educating the public on the essence of cabotage and the benefits and why we should have it. We've seen where this worked and worked very well. The then National Maritime Authority appointed me as its cabotage services consultant, and I went on a study tour of Malaysia for a week, and I studied the liberal cabotage policy of Malaysia, which was part of the things I used in preparing the report I gave to NMA then, and I tell you, to a great extent, was used by the National Assembly in preparing the provisions of the Act. All right? Now, and the thing is this: unless and until we get this right, we will not get the benefits. Okay? And my concern really is that the local ship owners and operators that were supposed to be helping to grow,
Yes.
They're already complaining that, they have become endangered species. And that what we actually wanted to achieve by having this instituted, the capital instituted, had not been achieved. And that unless and until something drastic was done about it, we will not actually get there. And that's the major concern.
Yeah.
All right. And I feel, I still feel that we have not really gotten there. And there is a lot to be done. Now, the stakeholders, mainly the legislature, the maritime stakeholders, the executive arm, and of course the practitioners. The sponsors already have an act in place through the National Assembly. The executive arm has the responsibility through the MASA to implement the provisions. Now, they've got some challenges, and some of them, capacity in terms of the platforms, the vessels that they need to really ply the waters with a view to making sure that those who are violating the provisions of the Act are brought to book. And I must tell you, the Act has very copious provisions on enforcement. An enforcement unit has been created in the MASA, and the officers, they carry their badges, and they're entitled to board any vessel that they suspect reasonably to have violated the provisions of the Act. Arrest and detain, even without a court order. Provided that within a reasonable time they can now get this registered in court, just with a view to do it. But you see, if you look at the Nigerian waters, and Cabotage Act allows cabotage trade to be operated from the baselines up to 200 nautical miles. That's the extent of the exclusive economic zone of Nigeria. So you need a lot of vessels to be able to patrol these waters and ensure that there are no violations. Now, I know that NIMASA entered into some memorandum of understanding with some law enforcement agencies, especially a Nigerian Navy, and they have a mode of cooperating, provision of vessels here and there. But the truth of the matter is that we still have challenges. We still have some Nigerians who are involved in what are called cabotage sabotage. They agree to be playing the roles of fronts for Nigerians. Under the law, the shares held by Nigerians, either in respect of bareboat chartered vessels or companies that are involved in bareboat chartered vessels, or even shipping companies, are not supposed to be held in trust for any foreigner. They're supposed to be held by Nigerians. But you see, some of them, just for peanuts, they do this, Secondly, you have a situation where we still haven't really advanced well in terms of registration. I would have loved a situation where you can sit in the four corners of your bedroom or perhaps your office, and you can log into the ship registry, special ship register for cabotage vessels and ship owning vessels on cabotage, and conduct a search on any vessel and get information, pay the necessary fee, like it's done abroad. Or you want to register any vessel, or you want to obtain any license or waiver, you just go there, pay the necessary fees, and do so from the four corners of your room. But now what we have is a situation where people need to travel and so on, and then the ship registry is yet to even meet international standard. Recently, there was a committee that was set up by the Honorable Minister to advise on the reorganization of the ship registry. The report has been submitted, but I'm not aware that it has been implemented. And it's my view that if it is implemented, definitely we will have changes in respect of our ship registry that will enhance the enforcement of the provisions of the Cabotage Act. Then, of course, the issue of finance. Now, shipping is capital intensive, even as it is also cyclical. But the truth of the matter is that in Nigeria, you see a situation where Nigerian banks or financial institutions are either reluctant or not in a position to provide the loans that ship owners require. And even when they're ready, they are not in a position to give it long term or perhaps at very minimal interest rate, which will be less than 10%. Now, shipping is long term.
Yes.
Okay, so you find yourself in a situation where you have to pay back the money you borrowed to buy a vessel within a very short time. When you haven't even recouped your assets, you're in a big mess. Okay, so these are some of the handlers. But I must tell you that the sponsors of the bill and the maritime sector, they actually envisage this situation. So what happened was that in a provision in the Act, there is a clause that says a capital vessel financing fund was being created, and this fund, the sources of the fund will include 2% surcharge on any capital contract that is performed by every vessel that is engaged in capital trade. Then all the tariffs, the fines, the fees paid in respect of licensing, registering, and also waivers of vessels, would go in there. Then interest that are accumulating on the fund will also be part of this fund. NIMASA is charged with administering this fund. The fund is supposed to be kept in commercial banks. Now, regrettably, since 18 years now, no single Nigerian had received any naira from this fund. Now, we've been talking. Recently, the minister said, the go-ahead has been given for this fund to be disbursed. But I'm not aware that has been implemented. And it pains me so much because the whole idea of that fund was to make sure that Nigerians who are interested in going into shipping or who are already in shipping will be assisted financially to acquire these vessels. But that's not there. But I must also say that that's not the only thing that the Act has put in play with a view to ensuring soft access to acquisition of vessels. There is a provision for registration of ship mortgages of not less than, with charters of not less than 3 years. There's provision for bareboat chartered in vessels with bareboat charters of about not less than 5 years. They can see, even those ones can be registered as Nigerian vessels and fly Nigerian flags, And the essence of a bareboat charter is that it helps the investor in shipping who cannot afford to put down maybe $10 million US, assuming that's the purchase price of a vessel, whether fairly used or brand new, depending on the type, who cannot afford that money to take that vessel on a 5-year lease or charter and bring it in and register it as a Nigerian vessel. It will just be paying the hire for that period and then use it as if he were the owner for 5 years. So that would obviate the responsibility of actually looking for money from banks to be able to acquire a brand new or used vessel and own so. So these are some of the things that we see.
All right. Okay, right now we're just going to put a pause on it. This has been such an interesting conversation, and we're going to take a very quick break. And when we come back, the conversation still continues right here. This is Law FM 103.9. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
On Law FM 103.9.
Thank God it's.
Do you have
an engaging personality, a great sense of humor, a thirst for knowledge, and a voice like a nightingale's? Then you are just the person we are looking for.
That's right.
Law FM 103.9 hereby invites applicants to an audition for the role of presenter in English and Pidgin. The date is the 3rd of July, 2021. Time is 9 a.m. prompt, and the venue is Law FM headquarters. For further inquiries, call 080-977-1039. Again, 080-9777-1039. Law FM 103.9 for knowledge and entertainment. How exciting, innovating, and enthralling good knowledge is. Of course, if you have it. Here at Nigeria's premier law radio station, we broadcast social-legal content that affects every aspect of our daily activities in a simple and credible form. You get it? Visit our website on www.lawfmng.com and click the Listen Live button to listen to us. Yes, Law FM 103.9 for knowledge and entertainment. On the busy streets, the air delivers the signal of Nigeria's first and only law radio station. The station where you get to hear the law, talk the law, and know your rights like never before. Law FM 103.9 for knowledge and entertainment.
What time is it? What time is it? What time is it?
All right, welcome back. You're still tuned in and locked on to Law FM 103.9. The program is still Law 101, and today on the show, we've been talking about cabotage law. Yes, and we do have a special guest in the studio with us, Mr. Mike Igbokwe, SAN. And of course, you know that you can send in your questions to the number 0703-2277-338. You can send a message via SMS or WhatsApp, or you can call us up on the studio line 0703-2277-338 and 0909-555-1039. All right. So just to continue the conversation that we're having, in your opinion, do you think that about 18 years after the enactment of the Cabotage Act, the dreams of the advocates for it and the intentions of the National Assembly have been fully realized by the local shipping industry?
Okay, I will say no.
Okay.
But I will also say that's not to say that some achievements have not been recorded. It's just that 18 years where I expected us to be. If you look at that, my book, you also see a lot of the things I said were going to be the benefits to be derived from the implementation of the Cabotage Act My expectation was such that by now, Nigeria, the Nigerian maritime sector or local shipping industry should have grown from being an infant industry that had been supported through cargo, through a restriction of foreigners in coastal trade, to control and dominate coastal shipping in Nigeria. Not one that foreigners will still be dominating, either through waivers or otherwise, and be strong enough to also dominate what we call regional cabotage. Okay, and that would be West African region cabotage within that area, and be strong enough to compete with the highly subsidized foreign-owned vessels in international shipping. I told you, the National Shipping Policy Act of 1987 actually encouraged deep-sea shipping and neglected coastal shipping. And we thought that with this, okay, let's even start from the scratch and build from infancy to adulthood the local shipping industry. And I think 18 years, of course, anyone who's 18 is already an adult.
Yes,
Come on.
absolutely. Yeah.
So by now, Nigerian shipping industry, local shipping industry, should have matured from infancy to the extent where it will be able to call the terms as far as shipping is concerned, not only in Nigeria, West Africa, but in competing with international ship owners in international waters. That's my disappointment. My precision was actually wrong there. But again, some of the factors I have already mentioned, we really need to, because see, major things that drive shipping, cargo, finance, the technical aspect of it, because it's three major areas you have to bear in mind that this Capital Act had actually tried to develop ship ownership, crewing of ships by Nigerians, and shipbuilding. These three things. So we need to really look at the three areas and ask ourselves, have we actually advanced in these three areas in terms of ownership of vessels? How many vessels are owned by Nigerians? I did make inquiries at NIMASA, yesterday. I spoke with the Registrar of Ships, and she was kind enough to oblige me with the tonnage of the vessels that we've got in the special register for cabotage vessels, and it came to a total of about 1.3 million, gross tonnage. Okay, and they've got 813 vessels on that register, a special register. Okay, and she did say there has been a significant improvement in the number of vessels being registered for cabotage in Nigeria as a result of some marine notice that NIMASA, published recently, asking operators and ship owners to ensure that they got their vessels registered, before they could take part in any cabotage trade. So, but I would have loved a situation where we had gone beyond that in 18 years, So that is just my disappointment. Again, with the cabotage vessel financing for not being implemented, I mean, we got some clients, for God's sake, who are they've gone into farming. I'm telling you the truth. It's a pity. These are guys who had up to 4-5 vessels, and they just went. They went down the drain. They're not operating anymore. Okay, and I really want to see a situation where this capital vessel financing will be properly disbursed. I must tell you, under the National Shipping Policy Act, there was a fund called the Shipbuilding and Ship Acquisition Fund, which actually did not go down well, in the sense that a couple of reasons were responsible for why it could not achieve the intended purpose of actually helping Nigerians to acquire vessels, which I don't really want to go into that. But one of the reasons why the conditions or the terms of the capital vessel financing fund were such as stated in the Act and the regulation was to make sure that the mischief of the past were corrected. Okay? But notwithstanding that, we're still where we are because there has been no disbursement.
Sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that you published a book in 2007 titled The Nigerian Maritime Cabotage Act Policy and Law, the Case and Advocacy. What is the book about?
Okay, one thing I found out is that a lot of intellectual materials get lost because the authors don't go a step further to ensure that these materials were documented for posterity, with a view to helping those who are coming after them to learn what they did and what happened and be able to know where to go. Okay, because you got to know where you're coming from, to know how you got to where you are, and to plan where you're going.
Yeah.
Okay, so because of it, I must tell you, starting from the time I was appointed the consultant to National Maritime Authority, now NIMASA, on cabotage services, I took on the role of advocating for the essence because I had seen it as a veritable means of actually building capacities in terms of local ship ownership, manning, and construction of ships.
Yeah.
And so I kept on writing, papers, advocating for the essence and the benefits of this. So in all these papers, I collated them and I published them. So in that book, you see things like the benefits of maritime cabotage, the demerits. You will also see the benefits of regional cabotage, the demerits. You will see the report of the study I conducted in Malaysia and in Nigeria, which I submitted to NMA. You will see the reasons why we decided to have ministerial waivers, because then it was very controversial. Some felt, no, don't have it.
Yeah.
Like I told you, we needed to relax, the three conditions, so as to ensure that we didn't shoot ourselves on the legs, So, and then we also have, other things that were papers that were written by those who were principal actors. For instance, the former in the National Assembly, we had Dr. Okeude, who was actually the chairman of the Committee on Marine Transport. Okay, he did a lot, So it's papers by him and by other stakeholders that were relevant in the speeches by President Olusegun Obasanjo, who, of course, provided the conducive atmosphere for that act to actually come into existence. All this I decided to put in that book to get it published in 2007, and I must tell you, in all modesty, that it is still the most comprehensive book you can find in Nigerian maritime cabotage today.
Okay.
All right.
Go on. Okay, and where can the book be purchased, or how much does it cost?
Oh, when it came out, it was quite expensive, but now it's gone down. I think it's about 20,000, but we could see come down to about 10,000. I
think Sharon has a bit of interest, so I'm going to ask you if you're going to buy.
Okay,
you going to purchase the book?
You can get that from our office at 28A Mainland Way, Dolphin Estate. You can get that.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Okay. As a Nigerian, if I do decide to register a vessel for cabotage trade today, how should I go about it?
You want to register?
I told you she has interest.
Are you withstand the pressure? Those guys hardly sleep. Hey, okay, all right. I think the first point will be to register a shipping company. Okay, and that you got to do at Corporate Affairs Commission. Okay, and then the objects must have shipping and so on and so forth, and it must meet the minimum share capital requirement for a shipping company. Get that shipping company registered with NIMASA as a shipping company, and then when you now have this vessel, whether it's fully owned by you or it's on bareboat charter vessel, bareboat charter terms, then you can also meet their requirements. Okay, I think they will need you to provide current tax clearance certificate of incorporation, from CAC 7, that's particulars of the directors, from CAC 2, particulars of the shareholders, and then the list of the crew and so on and so forth. So, but there's a form also you obtain from the MASA that you will fill, and then attach these documents and submit. And they will review the documents, and if there's any other thing that you haven't met, they will tell you.
Okay.
And you pay the necessary fees for the registration.
Yeah, okay. Don't forget that you can send in your questions via SMS or WhatsApp 0703 22 77338, or you can call the studio line 0703 22 77338 or 0909 555 1039.
Okay, on a funny note,
Yeah.
Who was nicknamed Baba Cabotage by the press in the early 20s?
Oh my God! Don't mind those postmen. Hey, oh my God! Yeah, actually, there were a lot of us who were writing on Kabuta, but I think it came to a point. The pressmen who were also interested, especially the maritime correspondents of different newspapers. In those days, I used to write almost on a monthly basis on the Wednesday page, law page of Guardian, the Guardian. Okay, and I think they must have seen a lot of work I was doing in that area, so they nicknamed me Baba Cabotage. So that's how the name came about.
Okay.
All right. So, on a parting note, what would you have wished to see in the Nigerian shipping industry 18 years after the enactment of the Cabotage Act?
All those benefits, that I canvass in my book, I would have loved them to have been in place now, so that Nigerian local shipping industry would have grown from infancy to adulthood and being in a position to control and dominate the local shipping sector and the West African sector, and be able to compete with foreign-owned vessels on international water. For instance, some of those benefits actually there ought to have been some, radical changes in maritime infrastructure. For you to have ships built in Nigeria, owned by Nigerians, and manned by Nigerians, you've got to develop the shipbuilding industry.
Definitely, yes.
Okay, so investments ought to have taken place in that area so that we will not have to import the vessels that will participate in cabotage, because when you're importing, that is some way of capital flight. You got to pay, get foreign currency to pay, and it's got to deplete our foreign reserves. But if all this are being done in Nigeria, are built in Nigeria, then of course you won't have such a problem. Secondly, employment will be generated. When there is a boom, in every sector that has to do with shipping, if shipping is doing well, will do well. Whether maritime lawyers, marine insurance, ship repairers, or you're talking of even IT people, so everyone, cottage industries will even develop around this one. Ports will be developed, will be dredged, because the vessel that will be plying those routes will need enough depth of water to be able to sail. So all these things are things that we expected. Not just that, we expected a situation where by now ships that are wholly owned by Nigerians would have grown so much so that if, for instance, there is any national emergency, Nigeria will not have to depend on foreign-owned vessels or foreigners to do that. Let me tell you, when we had crisis in Liberia, ECOMOG, Nigerian military personnel were asked to go there. They were shipped there. Okay, that was because they had emergency. Now, any country that has emergency can hardly have foreign vessels coming in and out of that country because of fear of loss of lives or damage. So, but your own national vessels or registered vessels will not run away from you. In fact, in those emergency situations, the federal government can even talk to the owners of those vessels to come in and assist them. Okay, and that will help you to be independent of foreigners. A situation where your local shipping industry is not developed will put you at the mercy of other people. And it's not too good. we have a situation where if we don't have enough vessels, in as much as NIMASA have been training a lot of Nigerians as seafarers abroad, if they don't have enough vessels for sea training or experience, because the foreign-owned vessels are not employing them, and Nigerians don't have enough vessels, there's a lot of enough money. They don't come back and they're not employed. That's not helping our development. And I tell you, those who were trained by the NNSL in those days, they are either dead or too old as captains or crew. So we need to train young ones to take over from them. Do you understand? So these are some of the things that I felt then when I was writing all these papers, that within 18 years, we should have overcome. Unfortunately, we haven't. And that is the sad aspect of it all.
Okay, on a parting note,
Yeah.
if you were to suggest an amendment to the regulations and laws within the maritime space, what would your suggestion be? What areas would you want to be tweaked?
I tell you what, our problem is not even an amendment, it's implementation.
Okay.
It's implementation. Because I told you, no matter how perfect or in quotes any law is,
It's implemented.
after a while you will find one or two things that are not actually helping you to achieve the aims and objectives of the act, and you want to amend. All right. Now, but I haven't really seen. If you ask me, I would just say I don't really think that we have strongly enforced or implemented the provisions of the act, and that the implementation had not used the dividends. I would rather say sometimes the political will is not there, or there is some political I'm not talking about this administration, I'm talking of since 18 years ago. I mean, this administration came in 2015. Okay, so we're just talking about a few years. Okay, but there can be changes because a law is useless unless it is implemented to the letter. And the moment those are supposed to be complying with the provisions of the law, see that you're not implementing, it's useless. They won't do anything. So you'll be back to square one. And those who want the status quo to remain will be there. So I would answer your question by saying, I don't really think that our problem is that of amendment. I think it is that of proper implementation and monitoring of the provisions of the act with a view to achieving the benefits to the local. I mean, I told you, since Capital Vessel Financing Fund had not been disbursed. What is implication? Nigerians who ought to derive loans from that fund to buy vessels, they cannot buy vessels. If we can't buy vessels, Nigeria will not own the capital vessels that are plying on our coast. So where do we stand? And if they don't have it, our national tonnage will not increase. Because there will be no Nigerian-owned vessels registered for cabotage. So they are intertwined. Okay? So I must say again that there have been certain critical areas or controversial areas as far as the act is concerned, which some people have been saying should be amended. That has to do with whether or not a drilling rig or an FPSO is a vessel, okay? Based on the interpretation section 2 or section 22(5) of the act, okay? But I beg you, I will not want to comment on that. Reason being that I happen to be representing one of the parties in an appeal I conducted in the Court of Appeal that's already in the Supreme Court now. So I will not want, because whatever I say will go against me, whether I support it or I don't support it. But my view is that solution to our advancing the benefits of Capital Act is not in amending the act. It is in implementing and monitoring it.
All right, this has been such an interesting, because he's Sharon's face, she's smiling. This is just so good.
She wants to own a vessel.
I'm telling you.
well, it's not bad to dream. I mean, those who own vessels, they started dreaming about it one day. You know, so it's not impossible. All
right. I want to thank you so much for taking out the time to be here. This was a very educative conversation that we had on the show.
It.
All right. You know that you are still tuning and locked on to Law FM 103.9. And of course, coming up at 3 o'clock is the quiz show right here. All right. So don't touch that dial. Keep it locked on to Law FM, because this is your station for knowledge and entertainment.
Thank you for having me.